Puppy can be heard from my 3-year-old son every morning. It gets annoying at times, especially when he wakes up at 4 a.m., but it's cute enough, so you know what? We just try to ignore it. Besides, he loves his tiny brown teddy bear. When my son, Trent, was a little over 6 months old, my aunt gave him a surprise gift. She said she bought it for over $30, but there was a small Charmin tag on the bottom of the stuffed animal, and I knew she probably just got it with the purchase of some toilet paper. But despite that, my son loved it. Eventually. At first, he didn't really like it. He didn't even really pay attention to it for about a year. I just chalked that up to him being little. When I tried to throw it away, while I was packing our stuff, my son threw a fit and saved Puppy from his trash can graveyard. They were absolutely inseparable after that. When my son was almost 2, we moved to Korea because money was tight in every month, and my parents offered to let us stay close to them for free. But we were concerned about Trent. We didn't want him to have a hard time readjusting to a completely different country. Our worries melted away when Trent immediately got used to Korea and got along perfectly with my parents. He started to pick up a few words in English as well as Korean, and by the time he was 3, he could speak short sentences in both languages. And Puppy never left his side the entire time. My son is now 3.5 years old, and for the past 3 months, he has given Puppy his own personality and voice. It was cute. For about a week, whenever Trent talked through Puppy, he would have a higher-pitched voice and would constantly ask us for hugs and kisses. When Trent was using his little kid's tablet, he would use Puppy's voice to suggest videos to watch. And when snack time came around, he would use the same voice to ask us for extra cookies or a cup of juice. But of course we encouraged it. Not only was it cute, but it allowed our only child to feel like he had a friend that was always around. 2 months ago, though, Puppy started to become a real nuisance. Trent would use him to scream at us, as well as hit us if we refused to give him whatever he wanted. Whenever hard hits, it was just as hard as a toddler could hit with a fluffy doll, but it was the principle of the thing. He should not have been hitting us. We tried to take Puppy away several times, but he would just keep hitting us. The screams that followed were far too much for either of us to handle. It always ended with one of us reaching our boiling point, handing the doll back to our irate son's hands. Yes, it was hard at times, but Trent was just acting like every kid his age. There's a reason why they call it the 3-nager phase. They're starting to develop their own communication skills, as well as finding new ways to express themselves. Of course, they would develop a bad attitude as well. We were still mostly a happy family. We would go to the movies from time to time. Of course, ones that were appropriate for Trent. And he liked to go bowling with us, to park trips, but that damn teddy bear always followed along. 3 days ago, we were walking to the park that was 2 blocks away from our house when my son looked up at me, while holding Puppy, and said, "Grandpa crashed. Grandpa died." I shook my head at him and sternly said, "Don't you say that. That's not nice. If you want to go to the park, you need to be nice, okay?" Trent nodded excitedly and grabbed my husband's hand before continuing to walk beside us. It was a nice day at the park, and it was the last nice thing we did together. When we got back home, I got a call from my mother. My father was driving to the local market when a truck T-boned him. The other driver was completely fine, but my father was dead before the ambulance arrived. My mother was sobbing by the end of the call, and I hung up after I assured her that I would come to see her right away. While I was heading back out the door, Trent walked up to me. He pointed Puppy at me and said, "Daddy kills, or Daddy dies." I'm sorry to say this, but I turned around and I smacked him on the butt as hard as I could. I normally would give him a softer spank, but my father had just died and I couldn't deal with any of his nonsense. Trent cried out in pain, and while he was crying, he walked out. "No hit, Mommy. Trent was good. Trent was good." I shook my head, no, and left. After spending the rest of the day with my mother, I went back home exhausted and drained. Trent was playing with my husband in the living room, so I walked into my room and watched TV. My husband came in about an hour later and asked if I was okay. He knew I wasn't, but I nodded my head and continued to stare at the TV. He sat beside me before laying his head on my shoulder and started to cry. I almost forgot how much he loved my parents. My father always tried to make him feel as comfortable as possible, despite the language barrier. We ate chicken for dinner that night. It was mostly quiet, except Trent using Puppy to ask for more fries or more juice. My husband was distracted by my father's death, while I couldn't get what Trent had said out of my head. He told us there would be a crash before it even happened, and he had singled out my husband. What did he mean by he will kill or die? Trent went to bed around 9, cuddling his tiny best friend. After I made sure he was asleep, I went to my room and saw my husband was already asleep. Shortly after my head hit the pillow, I fell into a deep sleep as well. I woke up in the middle of the night to my husband's body repeatedly bumping into me. I tried shaking him awake, thinking he was having a bad dream, but then I heard the sound of gurgling. I jumped out of bed and turned on the light. Puppy was halfway down my husband's throat. It was getting bluer and bluer by the second. I ran up to him to take Puppy out, but he wouldn't come out. He struggled for a couple more seconds before becoming absolutely still. It was 2 a.m. I walked into my son's room and saw that he was still asleep. With shaking hands, I called for an ambulance and sat outside Trent's room until the paramedics came. I carried his body away after confirming he was dead. When I walked back to the room, Puppy was laying on my husband's pillow. So this is why I need to write out a letter for my son to read in the distant future. I think it might go something like this. Dear Trent, I know you loved Puppy more than anything, and honestly, at the end, I did too. He saved my life and ended the life that threatened mine. Puppy told me 2 things the night your father died. He spoke to me while I was pacing around in my bathroom at 3 a.m. in the same voice you gave him. Take the cover off of Papa's pillow. Which I did, and I found 5 needles full of heroin. He knew I was a recovering addict. He also knew that I'd overdose on it. You see, I loved your father very much, but I knew he was getting tired of me. He also knew I had a life insurance policy that would give him more than enough money to live off for a long, long time. He loved my mother and father very much, especially my father. When he died, I knew it would drive him insane. I wish I could have been a better wife to your father, but the type of person I am would have never satisfied the type of person he was. Puppy talked to me again while I was falling back asleep, and he said, "Your family is fixed now." When I woke up the next morning, Puppy was gone. I didn't know where he went. I tried and tried to find him, but I knew it wouldn't be possible. You're crying now, so I'm gonna go get you out of bed. We can have some breakfast, and if you're good, really good, maybe we can take a trip to the movies. Love, Mommy. Hi, 207. It's Miss Viola Swamp. Thanks for listening, commenting, and subscribing. Go check out my Facebook page and leave suggestions for stories you want to hear. I hope to see you in class next time.